Let's analyze this topic in detail, because today we're looking at a genuinely mind-boggling economic paradox. Imagine a nation that's currently sweating over a severe foreign exchange crunch, right? But at the exact same time, it's literally sitting on one of the largest hoards of wealth in human history. According to a recent analysis by Dr. J. Prakash Narayan, the founder of Loksetta, India is currently facing this massive, hidden economic drain. But, and this is the exciting part, it's a drain that could absolutely be flipped into a golden opportunity. So in this explainer, we're going to explore this incredible narrative of a hidden treasure, a massive cache of wealth that's just sitting in the dark, and how unlocking it could completely transform a nation's economic future. $336 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. This isn't the GDP of a small country. It's not a massive national infrastructure budget. This is the value of the 2,273 metric tons of gold that India has imported over just the last 3 years. To put that into perspective, that is roughly 25%, a full quarter of the entire world's gold production during that period, swallowed up by just one country. It is a phenomenal amount of wealth leaving the country just to buy a non-productive asset. And as the source material points out, this relentless appetite for gold is creating a very real, very dangerous problem for the broader economy. Because right now, that massive gold bill is incredibly dangerous, mostly due to some compounding macroeconomic threats. First up, you've got global instability. Conflicts like the ongoing situation involving Iran are disrupting international transport, which means supply chains are chaotic and, frankly, super expensive. Second, economists are already projecting a massive foreign trade deficit for the 2027 financial year. And third, the energy bill. We are looking at an estimated $230 billion being spent in the current financial year on oil and gas imports alone. So, when you combine this astronomical energy bill with all this global instability, you realize that this cultural obsession with buying gold is dangerously draining our foreign exchange reserves at the exact moment the country needs them the most. So, let's dive into Section 1, a 2,000-year-old habit and the Roman connection. Now, it's really easy to look at a modern trade deficit and just point fingers at current fiscal policies, right? But actually, this wealth drain is a deeply, deeply ingrained cultural habit. Just listen to Pliny the Elder. He was a famous Roman author and military commander back in the 1st century AD. He famously complained that India was literally looting 100 million Roman sesterces, which was their currency back then, every single year. Why? Because ancient India ran a massive trade surplus. We exported highly desirable luxury goods, spices, pearls, ivory, fine textiles, across these monsoon-driven trade routes. And in exchange, the Romans paid us in physical gold and silver. It's a fascinating historical anecdote that shows us that for over 2 millennia, importing and hoarding precious metals has just been an integral part of Indian society and commerce. And that 2,000-year-old habit, well, it's led to a jaw-dropping modern reality. Today, Indian households and religious institutions hold an estimated 35,000 to 40,000 metric tons of gold. Think about that. That single 20% slice right there represents nearly 1/5 of all the gold ever mined in the history of human civilization. I mean, let that sink in. 1/5 of the world's gold is held privately within a single nation's borders. It's wild. Which brings us to another absolute mind-bender of a figure. At current market prices, that privately held household gold represents an asset worth roughly $5 trillion. $5 trillion. But here is the crux of the whole crisis. This wealth functions as total dead weight for the nation's economy. It isn't being invested in businesses, it isn't building new infrastructure, it's not funding green technology. It is just a massive, completely inert pile of capital. And the core problem here is stark. 98% of this phenomenal wealth is sitting entirely idle. It is locked away in household almiras, family safes, and bank lockers. Meanwhile, the Reserve Bank of India, they hold a mere 880 metric tons in their official reserves. So the wealth of the entire nation is quite literally locked in the dark, doing absolutely nothing to generate economic growth. All right, moving on to Section 2, the false hope, and why past solutions failed. Of course, you can't just have $5 trillion sitting idle without policymakers noticing, right? So in 2015, the government launched the Gold Monetization Scheme, or GMS. The goal was exactly what we're talking about: get people to deposit their idle gold into the banking system. But the result? An absolute massive underperformance. The scheme managed to mobilize a truly meager 37.81 metric tons for productive use. Out of 40,000 available tons, less than 38 were brought into the light. Clearly, the design of the scheme just totally failed to convince the public. Now, to understand why it failed, we kind of have to look at the other policy launched that same year, sovereign gold bonds, or SGB. This comparison is absolutely vital. Sovereign gold bonds mobilized around 72,000 crore rupees, which is equivalent to about 147 metric tons of gold. People bought virtual gold through bonds and they earned interest. Sounds great. But here's the massive catch. SGB placed a dangerous financial risk entirely on the government. At maturity, the government has to pay out the cash equivalent of whatever the market price of gold happens to be at that future date. The GMS, on the other hand, had very low risk for banks because physical gold was deposited. But as we saw, it totally failed to attract depositors. And wow, the consequence of that sovereign gold bond risk is hitting hard right now, because gold prices have just skyrocketed recently. Paying out the current market rate for those 147 metric tons is going to cost the Indian government a staggering 1 lakh crore rupees. That's roughly $12 billion in losses. The government essentially took on the full risk of global gold price fluctuations just to curb physical imports, and it is costing the exchequer dearly. Let's look at how we fix this in Section 3, the real golden opportunity, based on Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan's vision. So, past policies either completely failed to attract the gold, or they placed this ruinous financial risk on the government. How do you actually leverage this dormant wealth without bankrupting the state treasury? Well, the source outlines a revamped gold monetization scheme that is just elegantly simple. It functions exactly like a normal bank savings account, but for physical gold. Step 1. Citizens deposit their physical gold into secure bank accounts. Step 2. They earn a small, steady annual interest on that deposit. Step 3. Banks can then lend a portion of this gold out to meet domestic market demand, like to jewelers, for instance, completely eliminating the need for the country to import gold from abroad. And finally, Step 4. At maturity, the depositor gets their gold back, with interest in the form of cash, standardized gold bars, or coins. The bank takes very little risk, the government takes zero price risk, and the gold finally enters the active economy. But, and this is literally the absolute most crucial point, none of this works without some major policy tweaks. Dr. Narayan argues that citizens will never, ever deposit their ancestral heirloom gold if they fear the taxman. It just won't happen. The government absolutely must guarantee a no-thief police questions asked policy for standard household deposits. There has to be zero tax harassment when families declare their household gold. At the same time, obviously, the system needs strict, well-designed safeguards to ensure that organized crime networks and corrupt officials can't use the scheme to launder black money. Striking that delicate balance of trust and security is the only way to get that gold out of the Almirah. Because if executed correctly, the macroeconomic impact would be nothing short of revolutionary. This strategy would drastically reduce, or maybe even create a 10-year pause on, all international gold imports. Think about that $336 billion we talked about at the start. That money would stay inside the country. It unleashes a massive pool of capital that banks can use to fund private projects, green technology, and infrastructure. Over a decade, it could literally transform India's debilitating trade deficit into a robust trade surplus. It gives the economy this vital window to mature and reduces dependence on foreign energy without bleeding out our foreign exchange. To really emphasize the gravity of this moment, this source points to a famous quote by former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru: "Who lives if India dies? Who dies if India lives?" The point being made here is one of absolute national urgency. Banking experts, tax authorities, trade specialists, and jewelry manufacturers must urgently unite on this. They need to sit down and meticulously design an attractive, safe, and efficient scheme, because frankly, it is economically irrational to be starved for development capital while sitting on top of $5 trillion in dormant assets. And that brings us to the ultimate question, one that challenges both policymakers and everyday citizens alike. Will we allow a 2,000-year-old habit to keep $5 trillion locked away in the dark? Or will we finally innovate, build trust, and use that immense treasure to light up the nation's future? It's a fascinating economic puzzle, and how it gets solved could for sure define the country's trajectory for decades to come. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gave you a brilliant new perspective on that gold gathering dust in your locker. See you next time.